Blue collar workers and their values. What does this phrase mean to you? Is it personal? Professional? What are the traits of blue collar workers that we can all learn from? Why are these types of workers in more demand than ever? Think about these questions and formulate some of your own as we launch out onto the loop and discuss on Curiosity Continuum. Hey everybody, this is Josh.
And this is Brian.
Thank you for joining us today on Curiosity Continuum. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Curiosity Continuum is a podcast and movement started by two lifelong friends who want to share conversations with you that explore, examine, reframe common practical topics that spark your curiosity, help you integrate information, and enhance your everyday contextual awareness in a constantly changing world.
You can find us on the web, www.curiositycontinuum.com. From there, you can find links to listen to us, rate us, follow us on social media, all the things you need to do to get in touch with us and share your thoughts.
And on that note, you can rate us on your favorite podcast service where you're listening to us. It also helps us find a new audience when you rate us and you give us a star rating, or you just tell your friends about us so other people can start listening.
One of the kindest things and most complimentary things, if you believe that somebody that you love and care about would like to listen to it and you'd like to start your own conversation, that's one of the best compliments you can give Josh and I, that the work that we're doing here is meaningful and practical to you guys, which is our goal.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself, Brian.
That's why I said it, Joshua. So today we're talking about blue-collar workers and blue-collar jobs and some of the values that went along with it. And really, this is kind of reframing the conversation that's happening currently in the world, where there's so many tech jobs that are emerging and there's a lot of attention, and yet there is this really important layer of what we would call blue-collar work in the world. There's a focus right now to make sure that there's these things taken care of, because these people actually service the world that we live in and help us to have quality of life. My grandparents were blue-collar workers like Josh's, and mine were farmers, primarily carpenters, millwrights, that kind of thing. Josh, I know your one set of grandparents owned a lumber mill, and you talked about that in a previous episode. But remind me what your other set of grandparents did.
So my grandmother was just pretty much a homemaker, stayed at home, took care of the house, and my grandfather worked for the power company. And he did all the lines. He wasn't a lineman, but what he did was he would inspect lines for the power company and make sure that they were clear of debris and all that stuff. He would have to, and he did all the maps by hand before they did them on computers.
And didn't you say that the maps that he created were used as the kind of the gold standard for the area?
Right. And when they switched over to computers, this is after he retired, that they told him that, first of all, his handwriting was immaculate. He had this just beautiful handwriting, and they used his maps because they were pretty much scale, so they could just input them into the computer and they just pretty much overlaid right on top.
I will attest to this, that Josh has a similar ability to be able to scale things well, although the gift of handwriting did not make it into his generation.
No.
Reminds me of a time when we were in high school. We had to pass each other's papers back and forth, and we had to ask each other what it said on the paper. Like, oh yeah, that sounds actually good. And we'll give ourselves a grade for it, One person that comes to your mind, particularly in your family, Josh, is your dad, because I knew him as he worked in tech and what he did, but he had other things he did prior, which was kind of in your earlier life, a little bit before you actually moved to Minnesota, in the town that we got to know each other in, right?
Right. Yeah, my dad, he did work for the family lumber mill for a while, and he did that when he was going through college. So he put himself through college that way. But he would come home on the weekends, and he would come home on holidays and things like that, and he would work with my grandfather, and my uncle was going to college as well. But they would both come home and work. And my at that time, I think my grandfather had actual employees as well. So they would just kind of fill a role, maybe give the employees a day off or anything like that. But then he also did, after college and that, he was in construction for a long time. So he would travel around normally around Wisconsin and do construction. And I remember that's when I was really young, and he had a CB radio, and he would talk to us at night sometimes if he could get through. That was before my second brother came along.
That's pretty cool.
The good times.
I don't know if brother number 2 is listening, but I know my dad, when he was in the military, he was doing more, when he served during the 60s and things like that. He was in top secret crypto work. So he was actually doing intelligence work. And when he came out of the service, he went into the role of credit manager for a lot of different companies and different things. And so what I kind of saw him do was always more of a white collar role. And I think sometimes when you see those things as a child, you go, oh, you either probably go, I want to be like dad, or I don't want to be like dad, or, maybe somewhere in between. You're kind of looking at your parents to kind of see the model for what you might do in your life, just as an indicator. It doesn't mean that we're all the same as our parents, because obviously I'm very different than my folks. But sometimes you look at that and you just pay attention to it. My dad had a friend from kindergarten, and I remember we used to spend our family gatherings together, like on July 4th and things like that. And same age, and he was looking at my mom. I was pointing them out, say, hey, they're sitting there, stuff like that. And my dad's friend had, was very tan. He worked outside. He owned like a bricklaying company. So in construction, doing a lot of outside physical labor. And then there was my dad, who was the same age, who had a different type of stress lines on his face and everything. And my mom made a really important point. She goes, those two men, both have stresses. They both have things. It's just a different type of stress in their life. And I think that when you look at how the world is right now, there's more of a focus on the contributions of the white collar world. And I think we have de-emphasized the importance of the blue collar worker in today's society. And we're beginning to feel the strains of it.
Exactly. Like if you would go to another country, I'm just going to use like Germany as an example, even though that they're maybe not the best example of this, but when you're younger and you actually are in school, you identify quite quickly if you want to go to a 4-year university after, or a type of trade work. Now in our society, pretty much ubiquitous, everyone is told go to college. You need to go to college. You need to get your 4-year degree. That's the only way you're going to be able to, quote unquote, achieve the American dream. And I don't know if that's doing everybody a disservice, but we're starting, like Brian said, we're starting to see the effects of this. And the effects around us right now are our infrastructure. And that is a huge problem. I mean, we have bridges in this country that maybe haven't been rebuilt since the 30s and 40s, or even, somehow even older. And I was reading a report that said if they started doing fixing bridges now and money was not an issue, it would take like 80 years to fix everything.
That's a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a lifetime, and it doesn't have to be that way. So what I'm saying is, are we just saying everybody go to college, and just like we're not even thinking about these other types of jobs that are valid careers?
In our generation, when we were in high school, it was the default position that, well, if you can go to college, of course you're going to go to college, as you're kind of coming into that generation. And that was before all the digital things happened. I mean, the internet had only been around for so long, and it wasn't public yet, terribly as we were growing up with it. So there wasn't the ubiquitousness of like access to all the information, but it was kind of like, the American dream became like, well, this is what it is. It's a 4-year college, maybe a doctoral degree or something like that. Some of those educational things too, which we've seen in the school systems, everything was really designed around the Industrial Revolution, when at that time a tech wave came in and we said we need a bunch of people to be able to go fill these jobs that we're creating in factories. We're doing things. And you kind of saw the evolution of that come to the current day. People are chasing tech again, and it's a different type of parabola than it was before. But what's happening is that there's an overemphasis on that, because we believe that somehow that's going to be the wave of the future. And you can't just leave everything else behind. Like, it's an innovation that changes the world, but it doesn't mean the world revolves around it.
Exactly. And I mean, like, when this must have happened in the because we were okay. So we'll date ourselves a little bit. We graduated in the late '90s, but it was around the mid '90s, early '90s that they really started almost like devaluing this type of of work. You know what I mean, Brian?
Do.
From if you didn't go to college and you said to yourself, you know what, I just want to be an electrician, or I want to be a plumber, or I want to work outside, I want to be a farmer, that people look down upon you. And so it was kind of a societal thing at that point.
I think so. I remember when there was part of the school system we were a part of and things like that. You could choose to maybe go like a more technical route, but it was a very small group of people that did. And sometimes what was a sad reality was that school also sometimes was the mechanism for people who weren't doing as well academically. It's like, well, we'll put them at the trade school. And,
Right.
it was the amalgamation of the two. Those two things don't equivocate, or they equivocate.
Yeah, your intelligence really is it doesn't mean you're going to go to college or not. Some of the dumbest people I know have gone to college.
I have had classes
and
with
some
some of them.
Exactly. And I mean, and some of the dumbest people I know went to tech school too. It's just a person and what they're good at and what they want to do and how much they want to actually, push themselves to do something more technical or just more academic.
What's interesting to
And I mean, college has a place. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I really feel that if you want to go be a doctor, an engineer, there's like 10 or 15 really good things that you really do need a college education for. But there's 10 or 15 really good things, too, that you don't need one for.
I think I'm going to back up, not say I think, where the technology actually swung it back the other way was now you have the ability to be able to almost have a, quote, like technical training. Like if you want to go into coding, there's a lot of companies now
Right.
that aren't looking for the 4-year degree in computer science. What they're looking for is somebody who understands the languages that you're going to work in.
The experience.
And the experience of doing it. And there are people coming out of high school that have, 6 years of experience doing something. And they can go out and they can start making their way in the world for that, particular type of work. So the type of work may have changed, but what I like, even though I went to college, I enjoyed my college experience and things like that, but I realized too that there are so many times that you get shoehorned into something at that age because you think like that's what you want to do. It's like, well, this is
Right.
the money spent. And people don't value a gap year. They don't value, I'm going to go learn a trade. I'm going to go do something, because there's this pressure that if you don't have it figured out at age 18, because Lord have mercy, I did not have my life figured out at 18 years of age to steer the rest of my life. My life has gone very different than what I had planned. But those moments right there, I think, shape people, and their values are like, well, I can only go do this work. I can only do that. Some of the most intelligent people I've met have been my auto mechanic, has been my plumber, has been electricians. Here's the college graduate that almost electrocuted himself trying to rewire his fan. You don't want me doing that if I want to do it, because I don't know how it all works. I want to call somebody who knows more than me, and I will gladly pay them to come and help me do that. All the carpentry and millwright and all the other things didn't trickle down to me from my particular generation.
Right.
And those things. But, Josh, one of the things that comes to mind when I think about, I tried to really be slick on the transition. It didn't work.
If you would have went, I think you would have been able to do it.
Okay. Josh, one of the things that comes to mind when I think about like our, I guess I put it this way. Our friend John, his dad Fred, had a shop in the town that we lived in, and he was a super intelligent guy, and he could make something work really well, and he kind of had an aw shucks type of, just demeanor about him and everything like that.
The humility.
Absolutely, a big dose of that.
Yeah.
But you knew that if you brought your car to him, I mean, that thing would work, and it would work ridiculously well afterward. You could trust him.
Yeah, and if you trusted him, and if he told you it was going to cost $600, it cost $600.
Yep.
And you might have been kind of cringing at that, but you knew the $600 was actually $600 well spent.
Yeah, because he could stand behind his work. The interesting
Right.
thing about, especially now, if you put up a website and the newsletter form doesn't work, it's like, oh, sorry, I'll fix that. And then, you missed out on maybe some newsletters and things like that, but, no harm, no foul. If Fred were to say, oh, yeah, whoops, I forgot to hook the cable up for the brakes again. Like, that's not like a whoops, like you can just kind of, click a button and it's fixed. Like, you have to be really diligent you're doing those things to make sure it actually works, because there's people's lives and everything else in stake.
Same way like a doctor. I mean, I want my doctor to know what he's doing. I don't want the doctor, like you see those ads now where, are you a good doctor? Yeah, I'm okay.
Yes.
Doing a open heart surgery on today, I'm okay. No, you want him to say, look, I'm good, and I'm willing to pay the money for that. So why wouldn't we be willing to pay the money for some other skill or tech or just anything that you and I maybe, like, because we can't have all the skills.
No way.
I mean, so why not value all those skills equally?
Some of it sometimes is the fact that the folks sometimes who are the best technicians aren't the ones that are necessarily wired for leadership in the same way that we
Right.
would think of leadership. If you think of a Tony Robbins or somebody who's a very well-known leadership, guru or somebody like that, you think about, well, man, that's a leader. That's what they do. And there's people who are very good at what they do, and they're not leaders that way. Again, like being the expertise is not always leadership as we would see it. They can lead at what they do because they're skilled at something. And we need to value and appreciate people for where they are and what they bring to the table with it. Especially in business, and especially when you think of office work or something like that, the most valuable people that I've seen in organizations are the ones that can translate where there may be a what-if scenario or vision in leadership and make it actually work in the real world with a real team. When you have all different personalities and all different kinds of things, that translation of it is the really important thing. And so if you miss like an entire part of your workforce or way people are wired, you're not going to be an effective leader if you're unaware of that and understand that everybody has their strength they're bringing to the table.
Sure, and I think to kind of circle back around that these are, like, you can get these values and that integrity. You could really learn that from like a blue collar worker. Like if you can translate what they do into what you do, or if you're a manager, let's say, or that management person at work can translate that, can kind of put themselves in their shoes and empathize with that other person, then I think they can really, break through the ceiling to a lot of different people.
Those type of values of integrity, hard work, or your word is your bond, you're standing behind what you do and you take pride in that in a good sort of way. Those are values that the older generations had because they didn't have the convenience of maybe as many options to follow in the world. Like this is what it was, and they knew they had to make their way. What's interesting to see is, as you've kind of seen more of a turn towards self-employment entrepreneurism now, which harkens back to there are certain things that you had to do in those roles to be able to go market yourself, to go sell. So if you look at those folks who have been successful at the work that they do, pretty good people to take to the table to understand how they did what they did professionally for so many years at a high level, and everybody can learn from somebody like that.
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's probably a pretty good place to put a comma, huh, Brian?
I think so. We'll put a comma in the conversation here until next time. Thank you for listening. The challenge for you guys and gals listening is to be open-minded to every type of person and consider what they bring to the table and what you could learn from them and apply it to your own life. Because I guarantee you there's wisdom waiting for you if you're willing to listen. Until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Josh.
For Curiosity Continuum.